Okay, cool. I'm going to get started. Thanks so much for coming. My name's Daniel Atwood. I am Senior Product Strategist at Willow Tree, and this is Finding Your Voice Cases. So just real quick background on me, just so you know where I'm coming from. I work for an amazing product development agency called Willow Tree. We work with all kinds of Fortune 500 brands, and I work in our Charlottesville, Virginia office. That is the mall in Charlottesville. You may have seen crazier pictures of it in the news in the past year. It's an amazing place. You should come visit if you haven't already been there. So I think we're all here and we've all been hearing sort of like breathless insistence that we need to do voice and we need to do it yesterday. But I think sometimes, I don't know about you, like at least for me, it can start to feel a little bit like, okay, got it. Where do I even start, right? We're all kind of figuring that out, and I don't think there are clear answers to it. But what I wanted to try and do today is at least share, and it'll be really quick, some ideas on how we do that and how we help clients like figure out where to start and where there's actually opportunity for them. Here's my email. I'm just putting that there now because I know like the transitions are weird and some people have to leave early to get to the next talk that they're really excited about. So just in case you want to ask questions and you don't get to, feel free to, I'm always happy to answer questions or share resources or what have you. So we kind of, this is like our POV that we try and drill into our clients' heads, right? That the goal isn't voice apps, because a lot of time they'll come to us with like, the same thing that happened with mobile. They come to us with like some crazy idea that's like sort of a new thing, like, oh, let's make this personality that talks and really engages people, but on its own, it's not great, right? It has to drive your core business. So the goal isn't voice apps, it's about making our products and brands verbally proficient. So how do we do that? We ask two questions. One, what are the jobs that people are trying to get done when they use our existing products and services? I'm not saying you can only develop things that work around your existing products and services, but it's a great place to start. And then two, where can voice make it easier for actually to get those things done that they're already trying to do or doing? So in terms of process and how we move, at a high level, think about how to actually go through that. Number one is just starting with the obvious, like know what your customers are trying to get done. A few really quick examples of techniques we use to get at that. The user interview, that's nothing radical. It looks like this. This is not staged at all. The fun thing, and I don't know, has anyone here done user interviews or user testing with voice yet? Like in person? So I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but I mean, when you're doing user interviews about like a mobile app or a website or a packaged product, you can usually have a conversation on an equal footing with people. They at least know what you're talking about. You shouldn't ask them what they want, as any research will tell you, but you can at least do that and get some information. Now, conversations about voice, oftentimes we find when we recruit people who are not like early adopters of voice, it's a little bit harder to have a shared understanding of like what's even possible. So you say, how would you want to use your bank via Alexa? And people say, why would I do that? So anyway, there's some challenges to be addressed there, but that's cool because it pushes us to really focus on like what talking to users should be about in the first place, which is getting at needs, pain points. Does anybody know JTBD? No. Okay, jobs to be done, fantastic framework for just like getting at the root cause of why people are hiring your product, whether it's a can of soda or a consulting agency. Workarounds people are doing on your existing products and services, things they're having to do outside of your app, say, their hopes and dreams. So in addition to user interviews, even better, user observation. We often do this. We worked with Pepsi and their field technicians, who are the people who go out and fix the machines when they're broken, and we found that they had, it took them, I think, 13 and a half minutes to order a replacement part, like when the dollar bill thing where you order the soda broke. So that's an obvious potential. Now we created a mobile solution for them now. Now we're working on how to translate that to voice. But point is just there's no substitute for getting out there and just watching people do what they do. Similar thing for pharma industry. Some people who do clinical trial observations literally have to go through binders like this. So you get out there and your brain just starts to pop with like, oh man, they need voice. There's so many things we could do here. Third, feedback and support artifacts. It's a fancy way of saying like customer reviews, or really anywhere where people are typing things into existing products you have. So we worked with Waterpick. Does anybody have a Waterpick? Really? Yes. Yeah. Okay. They're coming back strong. They're going to take on the millennial generation. So places where people are already asking questions that maybe they haven't thought to answer. Questions that people are asking your Facebook presence, if you have it, that you are not set up to answer. And of course, the motherlode of all customer feedback, your Amazon reviews. And again, this is all generating, this is before you try and figure out like what we're gonna do with voice. It's just to understand sort of the experience people are having now. And then user journey mapping. Does anybody here do user journey mapping or has done it? Cool. So it's really like tried and true, and I would say unnecessarily like made overly scary practice. It basically just means like writing down what you know about how people experience a product or a service. So we've done this for like forest stewardship, right? It could be anything from that to what it's like to go to the movies, and just every phase people have before they go into the theater, et cetera. So all of that, you do all this work, you get the sort of a catalog of how people experience something, and that becomes like something that you can generate ideas against for where voice might help people do something a little bit more simply. And again, it can be something surprising too, but if you're not just finding those places where voice is just the better way of getting something done, then you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. So real quick, I'm just gonna share some great resources, people who have done a lot of work on this stuff if you wanna learn more, so just user research in general. Erica Hall's book, Just Enough Research, is a short read and is excellent, and she's an amazing writer, so it's actually fun to read. And Jobs to be Done, I mentioned earlier, there's tons of resources. Just Google Jobs to be Done. So once you know what your customers are trying to get done, you gotta know what the tech can do, and that might sound like duh, but we overlook this all the time. Like we get into solution mode before we step back and say, hey, these are platforms that are changing literally every week. Let's find out what's new, and let's find out where that can give us a competitive advantage. So this is just, I'm not gonna go through every one of these. I did this for another presentation, but this is just big announcements this year, and it's already out of date. But like, these are each significant, each one of these represents something that you should probably stop and say, okay, how does this change now what these platforms can actually do, right? P2P payments coming to Alexa, that's a big deal. Apple announcing Siri shortcuts, that's like a pretty smart, jury is still out, but pretty smart move by Apple to sort of play catch up in this whole thing. And so, but the big picture trend, right, I think as probably everybody knows by now, day 2, I don't know how many times you've heard this point, all the focus and most of the market is still on voice-only devices. It's very quickly going to voice plus screen. And actually, that's kind of a lie the way I said that, because really it already is voice plus screen. Like the #1 used voice devices far and away are ones that we've already had for years and years. And we all kind of get sucked up in the swirl. I'm not saying ignore the Echo and the Show and the Dot and the Home. I'm just saying don't forget where your users actually are. And so, and there's a reason for that, right? I think that actually, I forget his name, the keynote on day 1 from Alexa shared this, right? There's a reason everything's gonna go where within reason to voice in, visual out. It's because voice in is a much more efficient way of inputting information, period. And visual is a much more efficient way of receiving information, right? And this is like listening versus reading, but really you don't often need to read. Like a graph, how many words is that? I don't know, but it's faster than that. I really love this. I'm just gonna share this, I'll be done with like the industry trend stuff, but I love this quote from Nielsen, that screen-first devices are being enhanced with the addition of voice, and voice-first devices are being enhanced with the addition of screens. So we're sort of coming from 2 different directions to get to that multimodal heaven that we all are dying for. Does anybody have, oh, I have a time check. Cool, we're doing good. I stole this anecdote from my boss, but I just like it because I'm a movie nerd. Amy Adams understood this, right? Like how much more information can be communicated visually. when she cracked the code in Arrival. Spoiler alert. Cool. And then last thing, just under this banner of like understanding the tech, I can't emphasize this enough. I know this word gets thrown around a lot, but like prototype, that's even too strong of a word for it. Just like get someone, whether it's you or someone in the office or wherever you work, who's like an iOS dev, just get them building stuff. And because there is this reality, like we were just on a project shortly after Siri made some announcements, after Apple made some announcements about enhancements to Siri, and you get like the Apple version, right? And then you get like the reality. And so it's like somewhere in between, and you don't know what's actually possible until you get someone in there to like do it and say, okay, yeah, we can do some of this new stuff that's really cool. It's not quite as cool as they made it look on the big stage. So you just need to have somebody in there getting their hands dirty all the time. Just to give you a sense for how we do that, and I'm really spoiled because we get to work with some pretty cool disciplines. We had a designer on a recent project, researcher, iOS dev who did just a lot of the prototyping I just mentioned, content strategist, and a data scientist. It does not take all of those people. It would be hard to replace the iOS dev, but everybody else is expendable. Great resources on just keeping up on tech. I mean, on voice specifically, there's so many. I'm just putting these two, VoiceBot, who they're here. They're amazing. And TechCrunch, obviously they're huge, but I think they actually do voice stuff really well and sort of translate, like when Apple or Google or Amazon make an announcement about something changing on the platforms, they can kind of translate it into like what that means for your business and what you can now do with your customers. Third, so you'll have a ton of ideas. Next, you got to prioritize the options. I don't have a simple formula for this. This is the hardest one. There's tons of information out there like this, right? Business Insider did a survey of voice features used. We all know this stuff, or you've probably seen it anyway in the past 2 days. VoiceBot, again, a great resource, did a really nice one, sort of like what people are using them for now. It can be hard to extrapolate from that to like what, therefore, can we get people to do with our company, unless we are a weather company or a ride-sharing company. We did our own survey to find out a little bit step back from like the things that people are doing right now to what might people actually be interested in doing. And we'll go through all of this. Happy to share more with anyone that wants it. We did what's the word? Whatever, I forget, I'm not a researcher, a type of analysis on this to figure out the ones that really stood out. Take this with a huge grain of salt, but like the three that emerged in our research as kind of unignorable were moments where people want to do specific search. Like that basically means you know what you want. You know a song, you know where you need to get, you know weather, right? That's a really natural place for voice because you do it once, it works, and it sticks. Second, composition and logging, right? Writing stuff. This is one that is like very quickly going from like, it's a novelty that works half the time to just like, oh, it's great. I'm gonna do this all the time. And then coaching and instruction we didn't expect, but that was actually the number one thing that people were interested in, which makes a lot of sense when you think about the fact that people often need to have their hands free to learn new skills. And in all of this, I'm gonna get on a soapbox for a second. In all of your feature prioritization and think about what play you wanna make in voice, like we always try and push ourselves and our clients to not be Candy Crushes and to be Audibles. Again, Audible is here. Did anybody go out to the Audible truck and get free stuff? No? Oh, it was ice cream? Damn. Okay. And I would just underline that because, this could be a whole nother subject of a talk, but I just think it's really interesting. This just came out from NPR Edison. NPR is here. They did an incredible talk this morning. 38% of early mainstream adopters of smart devices or of smart speakers bought them hoping to reduce screen time. So just something to keep in mind. People aren't looking to engage more with technology. Arguably, they're looking to engage less. So just questions to ask yourself: where does voice make an existing process simpler? What features can people use frequently? Frequency is a big plus on any feature you're going to build. If you build something that people have to do once a year, they're going to forget they can do it. Where can we address an adjacent unmet need? if there's something else, when you think about the broader jobs to be, let me put all four up if you're taking pictures. Where can we address, if there's something that people usually come to you for and there's something similar that they tend to do at the same time, is that something that can be done well via voice? And then, of course, which features map best to the capabilities of our users' devices? I'm not saying, let your strategy be driven by the phones that your customers have, but it's a part of the reality. One great resource, foldingburritos.com, specifically an article called 20 Product Prioritization Techniques. Fantastic stuff if you're in the space where you have a ton of ideas and you need some methodology to narrow it down and be able to back that up with your skeptical colleagues. And then the last one, define an intuitive product. So I put this here because I think we're still learning how to communicate value to users. And it's really easy to build a product that people just don't understand or just doesn't feel right. Like when Chorus tried to launch sparkling water and it failed because the cognitive dissonance was just too big. And related to that, voice alone, as probably everybody here knows, has really terrible affordance. Affordance being the ability for someone to be able to tell what they can do with a given system, right? When you have an app or you have a website, you can see the menu items, and you form a mental model. You can get a sense for what you can do on here. If you're just staring at a speaker, I don't know, So you need to figure out a really smart way to walk people up and train them up on what's possible. And so one way to think about this is LeBron James. I'm just kidding, sorry. So that's LeBron James in a self-driving car. But we encourage clients to introduce voice the same way the car industry is introducing autonomous driving, one irresistibly useful feature at a time. So that's easy to say, hard to do, but the point is you tell people, do you want an autonomous car? And they're like, no, that's creepy. And then you're like, well, do you want a car that will stop you from drifting if you're falling asleep? Well, yeah, I love that. Do you want a car that will park itself? Yeah, I love that, right? They already have autonomous cars, but they're doing it in these little ways so that people can sort of register, oh, it does this, I like it. And eventually you're sitting in the back of the car on your phone like LeBron. Another way to think about this, finding a Goldilocks feature set to begin with. So too little functionality and people won't use it enough to remember it's there, right? If it's a once a month thing. This is really not about this is a little misleading. It's not about how much functionality, it's about frequency. Too much, so if you really try and bite off too much and no one can remember what they can and cannot ask or do, especially on voice-only devices. And so there's kind of a sweet spot in the middle, right? A few things that you do really well that have external triggers, meaning people check their balance because they realize they need to know how much money they have. That's an external trigger. And just one other way to think about this, mental models. Basically, what are the features or the tasks that people group together in their minds? You can just Google this. There's lots of good stuff on there, right? And these are the assumptions people make. If I can do this via this voice skill, surely I should be able to do this, right? So that's a fancy way of saying, don't build a skill that lets you, buy a movie ticket, or make a bank transfer, but not cancel that transfer when it goes to the wrong person. So that is not cool, but it is a really important thing. So you could cut this a million different ways, but in terms of the positioning approach that people are taking on voice, you sort of see this spectrum between companies launching with a few specific features that are probably core to their business and voice enabling them, right? Check my balance. Sorry, I just worked on a financial thing, so that's top of mind, but check my balance, make a transfer, et cetera. At the other end of the spectrum is promising a virtual assistant, right? And I think this is a really interesting tension. I think most people talk about doing that. I'm not sure, I don't think that's the right approach for a lot of companies, but that's a debate for the bar crawl. So Ally Bank is an example of a few specific features. Bank of America, does everyone know Erica? Bank of America's Erica. I hope, I mean, they spent a lot of money rolling that thing out, so I hope more people than that know what that is. But, and I think it's open. I mean, I think the reviews are really interesting. We just did a deep dive on them, and it's obviously incredible from a technology perspective. I think it's an open question. A lot of people are like, what is this thing? So, but hey, they're out in front. So their positioning, it's like it's like a dare. It's like, I'm Erica, see what I can do for you. And Ally is, a little bit more grounded, measured. So again, you got to decide what's right for you, but I think often people aim for the right before they nail the left. And so that's a long way of saying just avoid feature soup. Like whatever your positioning is on that spectrum, you just got to make sure that it passes like a quick comprehension test and somebody gets it and they got it. Because like, I don't think I need to tell anyone here, they're not going to go, and users don't want to study that section of the Alexa skill page that tells them what you can do. Like your position, if you get on the device, that's like a blessing. It's hard enough. They're not going to go back and study your documentation to understand everything they can do for the most part. So resources on just sort of like whittling that down. Anything by Indy Young on mental models. And then I know this is kind of a cop-out, but it's true. Just using voice apps a lot for your favorite companies because the design patterns don't exist yet. By which I mean they're like the standards aren't there yet, so you can help shape them. And it comes down so much to the details of like how does a bank introduce someone to voice, right? Because they can just send you an email and say, hey, we're voice enabled, and that's the way you should pitch it to your CEO, but probably not to your users. To your users, you got to be more specific than that. So final thoughts, just wrapping up. Obviously, look for ways to make a task faster or easier. Start simple, but start now. Make a skill set that forms an intuitive whole, and if people like it when it's even when it's a little lame, that's gold. And visual voicemail is my favorite example there. I don't know, it transcribes wrong and has done it for years, but I still use it because it is that convenient. And that's it. Thanks. Sorry, we went over, but I don't think there's one immediately coming in at 3. I'm sure people have to get places, but happy to answer any questions if anyone has. Yeah, please. What's that? Yeah, it will be. I've heard. Does anyone know how they're doing that? Sharing presentations? A few people. I'll put this. A few people have asked, I know, on the Slack, and they've said they're going to make them available via SlideShare. But you could always email me, and I can send you a link to it. So, cool. Oh, yeah, go ahead. I mean, honest answer, like no one has gotten to mainstream yet with financial services. I think Capital One, is there anyone from Capital One here? Capital One, you might know this stuff, right? Like they're way out in front on conversational user interfaces in general in that space. And I don't know what their numbers are because really annoyingly, it's impossible to get numbers on pretty much anything in the voice space because all the big companies are simultaneously saying it's the future, but really shy about the adoption rates. Long way of saying, I don't think anyone is at mainstream yet, and I think they're still wrestling with the problems. Like, there's a huge, there's a fundamental problem. Maybe they fix this, and I apologize to Capital One if they have, right? Like, privacy is a huge thing in financial services and in general. The way you access your Capital One skill via voice is with a 4-digit code that you can set, which is cool. The one problem with that is the code is then transcribed like anything else you say to Alexa in the Alexa card. And some people discover that and are not happy about it, right? But I haven't seen a solution to that. That's like waiting on Alexa. So, sorry. What do I think it will be? I have no idea. Do you? The first killer app? I mean, but I guess you mean more private than like to-do lists and grocery lists, because I think those are killer apps and they're already there. I don't think they're pretty private. It depends who you ask. I don't know in terms of like more intimate, like a therapy bot that actually. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. Like, I don't want to do a written grocery list ever again. And I'm pretty skeptical. I work for a technology company, but I'm not I don't adopt things easily. But it's just like, it's just so much better to do it that way that I'm never going back. So I don't know. I don't think I have a great answer, but you should make it. Cool. All right. Well, we're about at time. Feel free to shoot me any questions or if you want more resources or anything. Thanks very much for coming.